Hi, my name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. In this video, we're taking a look at SynthMaster 2.9. I think 2.9 has actually been out for a while. SynthMaster is not as common a name to hear as it used to be, but it's still kind of up there on the popularity stakes of names that floats around. And I'll say right up front, I'm a little conflicted in this review. The answer as to do I think it's great would vary on a couple of factors. And just if we were to look at price alone, it's going to depend what you buy this for. And we do keep seeing different prices, which I don't love. While everyone's like, oh, I can get a discount, a product with multiple prices is you got to wonder whether it's about the product or the price. It is in certain ways a very powerful synthesizer. In certain other ways, it's not very powerful at all. And it's in those ways that it's not very powerful at all that I get put off, because I think, well, hang on, if you advertise and say it'll do it, yes, you get away with it on a technicality, but now, also think that we need to be very aware that the last review that I came out of was Native Instruments Massive X. Now, Massive X is it's a massive undertaking, and in many ways, while not for every man, woman, dog, goat, not judgy, it's a rather classy and well thought through piece of kit. This, on the surface, claims to do kind of all the same stuff, but I think some of those claims are better on paper than they are in reality. So looking at a real broad overview, you launch the thing, it goes into a preset mode, and I think this says a lot about the instrument, and has us playing a sequence that's the Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams. Why they've chosen that, I'm not entirely sure. Nothing against it. Amazing track, and a passable stab at it. You've got all these presets all laid out into styles and this, that, and the other. Fair enough. I guess if you're preset diving, that's important. The synth excels at getting that sound. The thing is that sound the that sound for today? Or is it the that sound for some time ago? Some things should be timeless. Being a big fan of Berlin School, Tangerine Dream and the like, well, I can sort of say yeah, I also say no. It's a very VA sound, virtual analog. Does it sound analog? No. Does it sound virtual analog? Oh yes, very much. It nails a particular sound. And for that's a fair amount of credit and credibility. Oh, sometimes we do find missing samples. So it covers, the presets seem to cover a pretty big grab bag. Exactly how many there are, I guess they do seem to be counted. 1,187, odd number. But it's not in the massive numbers like Predator, which I think was up at 8,000 or something like that. A phenomenal number. As I've said, price point's a factor. So let's scoot over and have a look at where it comes from. The brand themselves, KV331, I don't know how that's supposed to be said. All these years, never heard it said. Don't know at all. They don't seem to have a lot else in the way of product. There's this, and then there's a SynthMaster 1, which is going more directly into the serum area. Now, if you're more interested in the digital side of things, it's probably the direction you should be going. If you're more interested in the VA side of things, this would be the direction that you should be going. To be perfectly blunt, I have never tried SynthMaster 1. It just didn't interest me. Its regular price is $99, but there's constant sales, plus every time you run this is constantly showing you that the price is actually 20% off. And it's not too uncommon to actually see the thing for, I think it's $49. So this constant, well, when I was a salesman, what's referred to as pants dropping concerns me. As I said before, is this about the product, or is this just about a quick turnover of cash? And in some ways, I feel like we've got a product that isn't really moving forward, doesn't fully deliver on everything that it says it can do, and yet strongly delivers on one particular thing with certain caveats, but that they are possibly just milking it for easy money. Now, if it gets you there and it works for you, brilliant. If the sticker price was $49, I'd say you get a lot of synth for $49, but you're going to have to spend your time coming to love it. With the sticker price at $99, it's half the price of Massive X, but I don't know whether it's half the power of Massive X. That would be for you to decide. There are other options out in the market. It is an interesting unit. That said, let's just run through the good and bad. It is definitely flexible as a basic virtual analog synth. The architecture in that sense, the number of modulators and what have you, is definitely strong. On paper, it's very, very strong. In practice, it is pretty darn strong. So if you're after a VA synth, like a very VA synth, and you want a lot of boxes to be able to tick, yeah, you do really well. It does have quite nice filters. Not the nicest filters I've ever heard, not the most amazingest filters. I think that's still sitting on Arna 2, probably, if we just picked filters out of anywhere and be like, oh, let's pick them. They are fun. But they're nice, and there's a certain amount of variability from one model to another, and you can tweak inside them a certain amount as well. So for what they do, I think the filters really do a good job. And, well, that sound. The presets have that sound. But again, I question, is that sound the sound that's being looked for today if you're only going for presets? I don't know, because I'm not that kind of a guy. In terms of the things that worry me, overall, the whole synth has a very sort of techie Excel spreadsheet, 90s kind of style. It's not an elegant layout. It doesn't feel like you're using a musical instrument. It does kind of feel like you're using Excel. And while I know there's an awful lot in there, I don't think they exactly nailed the workflow or the usability. Doesn't mean you can't use it, but press a button here to affect something here, and generally just a little techie, greebly. 30-minute demo timeout, well, I understand that, but it's for a synth that requires a lot of work to sort of get your head around. Throwing somebody out at 30 minutes is infuriating and has probably lost sales when I have been able to get it at $49, because it's like, oh, this is just too annoying, too hard, walk away. And again, as I raised, this constant discounting. Is the price really the price? No, because it's not, because they're always telling you it's a different price. What are we about? Are we about making a beautiful musical instrument, or we are about taking up his technology and just trying to get somebody's cash, and who cares what happens after that? That's for you to decide. Once you've got the product, it does work, and if it's going to work the way you want and need it to, brilliant, especially if you're buying it for the price that suits what you're probably going to get from it. Let's take some time to look through the modules. Presets, not interested. Right-clicking and left-clicking gets different things in different places and different situations. You just kind of got to get used to it. But if we click up here, we can initialize our preset. Yay, that's good, that's needed. If you look at skins, you've got two styles of skins. So you can go with this style or the XT style, which gives you the keyboard and some knobs down the bottom. We'll stay with that just because it allows me to show you some more features. If you want to save the real estate and aren't using any of this stuff, you can get rid of it. There are other things. There are darker skins, and for some reason they offer us the iOS skins as well. I guess if you've got used to using this on iOS on your iDevice, then fair enough. You might want to stay with that. The dark ones, I just think make it harder, but then that's possibly a personal choice because I don't like dark skins. So we have a keyboard and access to a whole pile of things. Exactly what pressing these buttons does, I'm not sure. Maybe that just focuses what it shows us, but you're gonna need to read the manuals to really understand the intricacies of a lot of this. And before someone goes to say, but you have to read... No, I don't read the manuals because as a reviewer, I'm looking at the product as it sits and how it comes across to me. And with 30 years or over 30 years doing this, if I can't get my head around it, it's either really amazingly out there or it's just amazingly as your father. Obviously, these things have a function, but some things you're going to need to read the manual to be clear on what the function really is. The easy knobs. So these are your macro knobs that you can assign to things. I could assign that from here to a easy control. There we go, that one there, and woohoo, control it from there. All very standard stuff. Clear modulations. You see the cursor's changed. I don't know whether that's a reason thing, and I don't know whether there's logic to it. I don't fully understand what that is. It happens sometimes and not others. Sometimes I wonder if it's a bug. It something triggers it, but then something doesn't. I don't understand, so I can't really judge what it is, but it's confusing. So that, we've got some XY pads. Some people really love XY pads. We've got a pair of them. Don't love them, so I will kind of leave them alone, but they are there. Now let's work our way from the top. We've got this routing thing. Unlike the Massive X, you can't move things around. The routing really just shows you what the routing of the synth is, and that's kind of handy because it's just available in 4 panes. But it's still really hard to understand what the routing is. For somebody who's made synths, who designs gear, and is currently in the process of designing a layout for an effect unit, just don't come easy. So if you're confused by it, don't feel bad, because it's confusing. How some things come together is just not clear, and it's a shame. Because it probably reduces the functionality of the instrument because you can't really work out what's happening particularly clearly. And again, no need for somebody who does feel like they understand it to say, well, you just haven't blah, blah, blah. If I can't understand something fairly quickly, with my depth of experience, I've got to say the GUI is suboptimal. Not to say it doesn't work, but suboptimal. You can turn things on and off. There is a little bit of rearrangement, particularly say with the filters. We can run them into a split mode, in which case if we've got a pair of oscillators oscillating, we can put them into a split mode. And so then they become, well, they should become stereo. To be honest, I haven't tested it, but they should, in theory, become stereo. Probably if we pan them out. Yes, then they become stereo. So that's the split mode if you want to run it as 2 completely separate synthesizers, or you want to build a full stereo type patch with separate filtering on either side. So split. Parallel means that these things are put together and then goes through both of those filters at once. So not oscillator 1 going through filter 1, oscillator 2 going through filter 2. It's oscillator 1 and 2, both going through filter 1 and 2 at the same time. There are reasons to want to do that sort of thing, so it's right to offer it. And then the simple in series. So it goes through filter 1 and then it goes through filter 2. That's the simple way of running things, but you can't rearrange. We can't say, oh, I want to put this somewhere else. That's just not how it works. You've also got the ability to bring in extra effects and what have you. Let's just pop an effect, a delay here, and I can't say I love this delay. You can't actually modulate it. One wonders why a modern delay does not have modulation. But to be fair, I find lots and lots of delays that don't allow you to modulate. Just putting that in to give ourselves a little less dry sound. Oh, let's synchronize that. It's oops, they better both be triplets. See, this is what I mean. It gets feel like a bit difficult to use. All right. That's basically our architecture there, and we can access that and play with it as we go. Cool. You can get into unisons, multiple voices, detune, cut off, what have you. The nature of this unison is that unless you're careful, all of here how it's got this whiny sound, all of your oscillators are starting at the same point. They're not moving out your phases into random locations. And that's part of the VA sound, but I don't know, there's probably a way to change that. Didn't find it easily because I find a lot of the knobs strangely named. We've got control over things like you can go into monophonic mode and control things, of course, pans. The fact that you've got pan here and pan there, I know it's under a different thing. Well, that's for spreading your unison voices, and then you can change the whole pitch. You will often need to use shift mode because it will get a little too excitable in its moves. And again, some of the readouts are a little bit like, why are you giving me that? It's just like, that's not the most useful way of reading it. But you will get there. That covers most of what you need to know about that. Oh, there is the ability to reset areas to what you want. Oh, and up here, there's also an arpeggiator sequencer. Again, I never get into this. I didn't even really work out how this worked. No doubt it does because you can hear it working. You heard it at the beginning, but you might just need to sit down with a manual and work out how to get your head around that wee fella. Oscillators. You've got two oscillators. They can also, at the oscillator, be moved out to have multiple voices. So again, that's the unison thing. If you put free on, then they don't start with that little tight flame kind of thing. And you can spread a certain amount of controls. Again, some slightly unusual controls in here compared to just your average that gives you one or two knobs. Whether you gain a lot of benefit from them, I don't know, but there's no harm in having them, I guess, so long as they aren't causing you confusion or frustration. We will run with one voice. You've got your basic shapes. So you've got some basic shapes here. You can pan and what have you, so you don't have to get into routing to get stereo voices. Coarse tuning, fine tuning, and then control setting up your phase, which is more relevant if you've got the free run off. Then you can set up two synced oscillators and change their phase relationship to each other, which will change the sound that you get. Okay, that's all cool. That's kind of nice. But I'd rather be running as free for the moment. There is some kind of drift system, which does seem kind of nice. Pitch tracking means that you can change how your oscillator works over the keyboard. That's good because you don't always want a thing to be pitched. And then tracking bass. I assume that plus 60 means note 60 in old school MIDI. Why they should still be offering old school MIDI, I don't know. Not because I'm against it, and I think it's sad that a lot of people don't know what MIDI is or how it works, but simply because it's a rather out-of-date way of putting it when it probably would be better to write C3 because people don't need to think in MIDI numbers anymore. But it's probably just the fact that they're not updating this stuff anymore, and fair enough, it works. You have access to a whole lot of other single-cycle waveforms, many of which claim to be from things. So this would be the Alesis Andromeda sawtooth. How accurate that is, I don't know. I always wanted an Andromeda, but I'm probably glad I didn't get one. They have a reputation for being exceedingly unreliable. So someone somewhere has most likely sampled off a whole lot of sounds and then transformed them to PCMs. Great. It's kind of nice. You get access to a whole lot of these, well, just waveforms. It's kind of cool. In terms of searching through them, I think it's possibly a little random, but you've got a lot of pre-built waves. That's kind of nice. I see them as a bonus. There are also multi-samples, but most of them are not super usable. I didn't see that one before. That's like the old Fairlight thing. It is also possible to bring in your own. So you can just literally drag and drop them. Go to a folder, pick up your sample, drag it, deep, 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 drop it, and it will be there. Here's one I prepared earlier. So that's just taking my sample and spreading it across the keyboard. It handles this really, really nicely. This is a plus. If you're looking at this as a VA and a VA in which you can drop your own sample, then I think that this is actually really, really nice. If you just want to do single sample, I'm not talking about multi-samples, how multi-samples are done. If you can do your own, I really have no idea. I have not looked into it. You'd have to read the manual. But the drop a sample on middle C, spread it across the keyboard, the old school approach, it does very, very nicely. And will, of course, respond to you. So that truly is a good thing about it, and a little unexpected. That's quite nice. So in terms of, this could be used as a competitor to, say, Reason's NXT. Okay, limited in the sense that you can't play as many samples piled up on top of each other as once, although you do have a second layer, so 4 is easy enough, and normally 4 is plenty. But then you can run it through the filters and the other architecture, which does blow away NXT, at least on paper, and more variable filters, yeah, that wins. So there's quite a set of possibility there in what you can run and do from your bass oscillator. There is other stuff you can do, and you can get into these modulators. So a modulator 1, you see it turns itself on here, but it then gets complex as to how to handle. I'm looking at oscillator 1. Okay, I've flown in this modulation. How do I control it? The problem is, I can't. You have to go to the modulator and then control it here. I understand that because that's DX7-like thinking to say, okay, we've now got this second operator. What ADSR are you going to apply to this second operator as it works on whatever you've sent it to? There is a logic. Logic for the loudspeaker, I'm not sure. So it's there, and it does work fairly nicely. It is definitely a workable kind of an FM. Not a DX7 kind of an FM, you're not going to get there, but some of the simple 2, 3, 4 operator kinds of things you can probably get away with doing. This shows you 4 modifiers, or 4 modulators, 4 operators, but you can't always run them. If I look for my second modulator, it doesn't let me have it. So this is where I get annoyed. It's like, well, hang on, it's there, but I can't access it. That's just annoying. So in terms of having a clear and open architecture to do some of the amazing things that digital synthesis can do. Forget the A bits, just make it V. That would be virtual digital, and I'd probably better not say that. That's where I get annoyed, because it's got such a techie digital approach that they've kind of shot themselves in the foot when it comes to expressing what digital could really do. And that's always been a frustration with this device. You can modify to itself, which is feedback. So if we were to assign an ADSR or an envelope or something to this, then yes, we can get very nice basic little FM basses, pianos, that sort of stuff. It is possible to get quite detailed sounds out of this. You listen to the presets, you will hear detailed sounds. So nothing against that. I'm just looking at the architecture, its pluses and its minuses. There's then all this algorithm stuff, and for the life of me, can't work it out. Again, deliberately didn't read the book on it. You've got all these different things that it can do. Half of them either didn't sound any different or just didn't sound at all. Where's the win in that? You know, we're going up against, as I said, the last thing I looked at was Massive X, which is newer and twice the price, but everything did something, and it was going to be a lot easier to work out what it does. So for an instrument that makes these big claims that we can do all these styles of things, on paper, I don't back it in the real world, and this is where it falls flat, that its digital abilities are just kind of not what they should be based on the marketing. So that's your oscillator. Cool. For what it will do, it will deliver very, very nicely in that way. Oh, sorry, additive. Again, it offers additive and says it will do additive. Yes, you got me on a technicality. That's additive. We've piled up a lot of sine waves, and we can say that that's additive. Is that really going to match up with real additive synthesizers? No, sirree, Nancy, it ain't. It's a cute addition which you might use from time to time, but it is not. Wavetable. So this is the supposed serum beating thing. Load a wavetable. So if we were to assign our... Go to mod 1 and make sure there's plenty of it happening. So let's go for the uglier sound source. For Wubbery. But again, I just get the feeling that this is not as focused or nailed down or suited to the Wubbery task as people want. Now, people say, no, this, and that's great, because I don't do the Wubbery paint strippery kind of thing. So I'm not saying definitively one way or another. I just, based on feel, don't feel like it's as elegant as it perhaps should be based on their marketing. Vector, okay, this will probably do everything it says. Vector, the idea being that you have 4 different sounds. And move your way around as that thing's playing back, and you end up with a moving sound. I think that one's probably as described because it's pretty easy to do. Audio in I haven't tried using. I assume I can fly audio in and then it will let me do stuff with it. Okay, cool, great. Not every synth has that. Assuming that it works, wonderful. You can use it as a source here. As mod 1, we could use audio in. Your ability to send that to filters, I don't know. I didn't test. I've put things through synth filters before, and it can be cool. It can be a bit pointless. It's going to work or it's not. But I don't feel like we can insert these things. Oh, there we go. My half hour is up, and now it's going to tell me how I can buy it for less money. Let me close this down and start again. Preferably without having to have sweet dreams. Cool. So we've covered all the oscillator forms and basically what they will do. Again, very strongly feel like as a VA or a VA with the ability to drop in a sample on middle C, we're winning. The other things, see them as bonus. I don't think they are the strength of this instrument. Filters I do rather like. We've got several different models. Digital VA ladder, which is a mini. Diode, which is a TB303. I think others have used diodes as well, but that's what it's famous for. SVF, which is the little Oberheim SEM. And Byte, which is their own thing. The models are pretty good. As to whether they sound like anything, again, I stay right out of that one. You can drag around up here or here. Little complex. Each model tends to have different gain structures. No doubt over time you will learn them. Initially it can be a little disconcerting as you move from one to another. You'll find that your modulation doesn't follow. I understand that, but sometimes that's a bit annoying. I've set up modulation on the cutoff, moved to a different model, and whoop, it's over with the other model, not with the one that's actually in use. I would prefer that it says, oh, you want to modulate the cutoff. So that means you want to modulate the cutoff. Not that you want to modulate the cutoff over there, which you're not using. You want to use the one that you're using. So it's that little bit of thought about being sensible and practical and helpful rather than technical. They are capable of being nice and pointy. If you don't like the loss, you can gain or use the boost, which will put back whatever you have lost through it keeping the levels even. Key track, not key track. All the models are pretty cool. There's nothing against any of the models as such. Some of them you can change the amount of nonlinearity that you have. So that's how messed up it is. And in certain situations you can get a slightly nicer sound at the cost of some CPU, which does remind me, if we're looking at CPU, in settings we can set what our normal running quality is, whether it's draft all the way up to best or driven by the preset, and then offline, meaning when it renders we can set it to a different amount. The synth does lose sparkle the lower the quality we go. To be expected. It just does math less often. But if you are on an older machine, being able to run your composition in draft mode and render off in best is probably a good thing. Just be careful, because some DAWs don't like that change. If that's the case, then you either have to set your DAW to render in 1x or real time, which means they quite literally record off, or quite literally bounce or record off what's happening. It's kind of the only way you can do it. Not all DAWs will have a car, but I know some will with some synths. That's just a warning in case you encounter that wee issue. But you've got a certain amount of control over how things work. Again, the cursor keeps changing, which would indicate something's happening, but I don't think it is. Some things you can change your slopes and modes and what have you. So again, really quite versatile in terms of the filters. More than I'm going to be able to cover here as I run through. There's the ability to put drive in, no, before, after, or inside filter. That must be where the filter's got some sort of feedback loop, and then it goes inside. Generally, before will do the job. You might pull back your pre-gain, which is how much is going in before, and then gain. So these three gains, and you're a little unclear as to where they are, but there is the ability to have this wave shaping as well. Again, haven't gone into it, feels a little techie on my side, but it's not to say that it won't do what it says on the box in a very VA sort of a way. Now, if we want to assign this to be modulated, we right click add modulation, and we find what we want to use to modulate it. ADSR envelope 2, I think we will go with. If this took me a while to find. You look here and it goes, oh, ADSR2. It has focused this for me, and that's kind of cool. I've called on it. I've said I want to do something, so it's focused it for me. It's brought me forward. That I do like. I do agree with. However, I'm then lost with, well, where's my ADSR1? I've lost it. It's gone. Never to be found again. Right-click will actually give you, and it tells you whether something's targeting it or not, as in something's using it. The attack slope is kind of really working on the assumption that only one kind of sound is being made from it. I get it, but it annoys me. In terms of full length, it's, I believe, 18 seconds. It hasn't translated nicely here. It's okay. We can invert our slope as well. So the sloping and what have you is nice. Decay time, sustain level, but they are designed to be fast envelopes. There is not as much thought gone into how we're going to handle this if our user wants slow envelopes. Very common, sadly, on synthesizers. They think that people only make one kind of music. There's trance, and then there's, well, trance. Which is kind of sad. It's a little like saying there's country and country, or there's metal and metal, or worse, that there is metalcore and metalcore. It's like, you know, that makes me sad. While I understand optimizing an instrument for a particular path, if you've really optimized it for that, you can put a button on the side that says, press this if you can only believe in trance, kind of thing. You know, with the amount of thought that's gone into greebly little, you could do this or you could do that in here, why could they not give us envelopes that were much slower? It's not hard. Put a button beside each of these, or even just a general button that says, yeah, we've got fast envelopes for you, and we can give you really slow envelopes for anybody called Brian Eno. It just seems to make more sense, but I don't know. That does require the understanding that there are people out there who are not exactly the same as me. So, ADSR2, I can set my something I did kind of like was that, that's gone off the edge. Oh, no, it hasn't. It's was this lag knob. I don't know whether I've ever really seen one attached to an envelope before, but it evens it out. Now, the reason that's nice is sometimes when you're playing with an envelope, you can hear the turnover point. Like, you can hear the sound get to the top and change direction. And it adds an artifact that you just don't want. Kind of ruins your sound. Whereas if you add lag, as in you slow it down and smooth it off, it will get rid of that sense of changed direction. And see, really, that's giving us a nice little brassy sound. Cool. And this is where I start to really like the instrument. We lost our delay, which we'll put back in. And whilst we're there, we'll probably put a chorus on as well. What have we got? Yes, here. Some things you think are going to be left click and they turn out to be right click. Okay, now where is it? There. Okay, there's stereo. Wasn't my plan, but it will do. ADSR 1, let's give ourselves more attack time. And more release time. Having these buttons all the same size is a little disconcerting. I would rather that the slope buttons were knobs were maybe half the size or something. It gets confusing trying to work out where the actual ADSR knobs are. Again, there's just that little lack of thought of detail. Here we can hear that turnover. Like you can hear where that happens. So let's look at softening it up. See? We don't hear that literal turnover point anymore. That's a thing I really like, and I'd love to see that on some other synths. Other synths don't always make lag function easy, and this probably doesn't make lag function easy for something that's coming from somewhere else, but the fact that it's there, it is a win, and it definitely helps in the VA stakes. Part of what helps it to sound good and win, because we make our filters sound so much nicer. See, so we're getting a bit of a Blade Runner kind of a thing. Oh, it's showing my keys, how nice of it. That's basically our filters. So we've got all these different models, and with different models comes some different knobbage. Overall, capable of sounding really, really nice when you work with them. Just watch, because they can overdrive easily because you've got gain in 2 or 3 different places. So just kind of keep an ear on what's going on, and also to deal with non-linearities. Now, getting into this, we've already looked at our basic ADSRs. We can look at MSEGs. Now, we've all basically seen MSEGs before, which is like an ADSR, only you can have more points all over the place and assign them to whatever. So no particular need to go into them. They look like they work okay. Not the prettiest to look at, but they do work okay. We can also lag them, which is great. Sync them to things, to a snap value. Envelope length means that it runs faster. It's not quite the same as a speed knob, which you have on most of them. And like most effectors here, you can actually reduce the amount of modulation that it's sending out. You can set some loop points so that once it hits a certain point, it'll just go round and round, which means you can use them as LFOs as well with a more complex waveform. So MSEGs, 4 of those, they're fine. LFO, let's look at giving ourselves a wee bit of modulation. Now, we don't want this to be too dramatic, so let's go with the fine-tuning LFO 1. Yep, that seems to be working. We will need to set that to bipolar. Why they're not set to bipolar, I'm not sure, but I guess some old synths were set to uni and did their vibrato above the tuning rather than around the tuning. A choice had to be made, but now we can see very clearly what's happening, and we can focus that a little bit better. We can, again, it's one of those, it doesn't give you a readout here, it gives you a readout up there. It's okay, you get used to it, but the range is pretty large, so your shift knob will help. That's nice. We can do things like adding noise into that. We won't really hear that noise here. We can add a delay and attack. So as in delay says we don't start your vibrato until this period of time, and then suddenly we turn it on. Adding the attack means that from the point that the vibrato should start, we will fade it in. Nice. And then we can turn down the overall volume of what's coming out. Now this is where it gets annoying because it's kind of hard to find out how to control that. again, short of going into here and finding this one and changing something. And I'm lost. I quite honestly am lost. I've never, despite the fact that I love matrices, I gotta admit I'm a little bit lost on that one. Okay, there we go. So we can send a lot and then control it here, which means that we could then use our MIDI modulation wheel. Turn that down. So that all works quite nicely. It is possible to also add, if we were to go to here, where is it? To also add the via mod wheel into here, in which case we get rid of clear modulation. Now that is good. I like that, but it sometimes can be a little confusing to set up. But once you've done it a few times and learnt its vagaries, you will get used to it. As I've said, one of the downsides is that it's quite techie 90s Excel spreadsheet in overall usability, but there's a lot of functionality in here. Probably not the best way to display it, but there is a lot of functionality in here. So we got 4 of those LFOs, and they can be set up to do some stuff. Oh, this is kind of cool. You can change the length of your LFO. Tone, I've not fully got my head around, but this one. So if you've got a complex LFO, you can actually reduce it, like quantize it, and it starts to become a pattern, a little like a random LFO, only a pattern. There's also the possibility to run 2 different waveforms and balance between the 2 of them. That would be more obvious if we were to add to here. That's a really nice thing. See, as I say, as a VA, there are some really cool features in here. You've got to work with the instrument to really be able to use those features. So that's all kind of cool. There's the possibility to run sequences. So quite honestly, they are just a set of repeating things. They're like an LFO, only you define them a little bit more. Cool, won't get into that. Keyscaler, meaning that we can take something and then change how it's scaled. Let's just pull that back so we sound a little less strong. 2D envelope is related to our XY pads. I'm not into XY pads, so I'm not going to get into this, but you've got a 2D X and a 2D Y, and then a second one. So you've got 2 of those. Yeah, I'm sure they work just great, but I'm not the guy to go into those. So overall, you've got 4 straight ADSRs, which are flexible. A little annoying to use, but flexible. You've got 4 MSEGs, 4 LFOs, 4 of these sequence things, 4 of the, and then 2 of the 2D envelope things. So a lot of modulation possibilities right there on the face. And couple that with nice VA filters. Not the best I've ever heard, but far from the worst, and very usable. And you've got a really nice, cover a lot of ground VA synth with the ability to use one of your samples as an oscillator, and then some doohickery trickery with meddling with additive. Now, there is no reason why you can't actually build additive out of a whole lot of complex sources. So if you're inventive, in theory, you should be able to set all of these to 0 or to 1, therefore they're all on the same thing, detune them slightly, and then you've got an 8-voice. Different oscillators all running at once. So there are various ways that you can use it a little creatively and do stuff that's slightly outside of what it was designed for. The wavetable thing never fully floats my boat, really doesn't. Will it compete with Serum? No, I don't think so. But will you be able to get interesting things out of it once you understand how to fly it? Probably, yeah. The vector works. It's not hard to do a vector. You just get your 4 points and you move around in space and time as your thing is going audio in. Well, so long as it brings the audio in properly and allows you to route it somewhere useful, brilliant. Whether it allows you to route it to the filter is a whole other question. Maybe you can fly it in on the side here instead of one of the oscillators. That would be my guess, because this was a little, well, it's a little outside my ken, but not that I wouldn't know how to do it, but I couldn't work out its logic. But I did notice in one instance it seemed to be able to simply replace this oscillator with what was coming in from the side, in which case that would allow you to fly in a vocal line, say, and put it through these filters with these modulations. People spend a lot of money on boxes that allow you to do that kind of stuff. Well, there you go. You could do it through here, assuming that works. I'm going to say try the demo first, make sure that it gives you the results that you're anticipating. I think it probably would. And then, you're good to go. That really covers our instrument. You can see your modulations and narrow them down by just only showing you what you're currently focused on, which is probably a nice idea. But overall, I still find it a little hard to focus on, but you get there. So again, bottom line, very interesting instrument that's let down by an old-fashioned and unintuitive, like an unmusical way of laying things out. It's focused on its technology and its box ticking more than on its musicality. But so long as you can live with that, especially if you're a fan of tools like, say, Meldus tools, which are really... then there's a lot that can be done in the VA arena, along with adding in a little bit of sampleology stuff. But that's really only samples playing back as an oscillator waveform, not into kind of loopery and what have you, or if it is, I've never seen or heard it being done this way. But do what works for you. It's not going to be an easy drum module for the average person. In terms of pricing, at 100, I think they know well that they are selling it at the wrong price, because they're immediately giving 20% discount to everybody who shows up. Which I think doesn't speak well for a company. When I was selling even a low-end brand that was constantly on sale. Well, in many countries there are laws against constantly being on sale, because the price is the price. It's not that price, it's this price. So in terms of playing around with your expectations and grab it now whilst you've got a discount, it's not a thing that I think is the most elegant. Populist, but populist, elegant don't always go hand in hand, and populist and good for you commonly don't go hand in hand either. Go out on a Saturday night and populist is being full of beer and speed. What's actually good for you is probably never got anything to do with beer or speed, let alone getting into fistfights and catching things that you need your doctor to give you penicillin for on next Wednesday. So I think bigger picture, perhaps, there's a lot to offer here, but don't fall into it because you think you're getting an easy ride. You're actually getting a difficult ride, but if you know what you're doing, or are prepared to take the time to know what you're doing, to understand the instrument, especially if you pick it up for, I think, once a year or several times a year. I've seen it. It's been a while. I really don't pay a lot of attention to this device, but I have seen it at 49. If you picked it up for 49, you'd have a real doozy of a VA synth, provided you have the mindset to be able to encompass its rather greebly, techie sort of an interface. If you have any questions broadly, not specifically about how to troubleshoot this device, that's not me, that's KV331's support department. But any questions broadly about the material or things like it, ask them on down below, preferably after hitting the subscribe button. And you can scoot across to higherhertz.com and subscribe there, different channel of information. But ask your question. If it's something that I can only answer by seeing and hearing what's going on, please make sure you make and link to a video so I can see exactly what's going on, or I'm going to give you either no answer or a vague answer, which just kind of wastes everybody's time, and it frustrates me then because I can't help properly. I feel like I'm just sort of snookered to lose from the get-go. If you are interested, if I've piqued your interest with this, then scoot on over. They do give you a demo. You can keep running the demo. It will just go crazy at 30 minutes in and stop playing properly, which is fair enough. I just think that it's far too short a time for such a complex instrument. Massive X, by comparison, I think they say it's going to be 20 or 30 minutes, but it's an hour. They know that 20 or 30 minutes is just far too short a time to kind of get anywhere, or you start to get somewhere and then blink, so you're frustrated. It's not the best way of doing it, but it is what's there. And if you find that this really sort of suits what you're looking for, great, go for it. You have a great day.